September 8, 2021 Executive Committee meeting. We acknowledge that we are on traditional lands of the Treaty 4 territory, a treaty signed with 35 First Nations across the southern Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on homeland of the Métis Nation. To ensure social distancing measures are being met during this time, some members of the city administrations are attending the meeting today through video conferencing. I would like to remind those who are attending through video conferencing of the following. Please ensure that your video cameras and microphones are turned off. If a member of council wishes to speak, use the raise hand function to be placed into the speaking queue. When speaking, remember to unmute your microphone, enable your video camera, and all votes will be conducted with a recorded vote. Thank you. Can I have someone to move a motion to approve the agenda? Councilor Bresciani. I'll call the question. Anyone? All those opposed? I see none. That is carried. Thank you. Can I have someone to move a motion to approve the meetings from minutes from the Executive Committee meeting held on August 4th, 2021. Councilor Hawkins. Thank you. Any errors, omissions? I see none. Call the question. All those opposed? That is carried. Thank you. We will move into the delegations on EX 2158. City Centre Core Development Advisory Committee, terms of reference. Okay. So I would like to call upon Tim Reed from representing Regina Exhibition Association, and Lisa Gibbons representing Regina Warehouse Business Improvement District. Are you with us?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Reed, Ms. Gibbons?
Ms. Gibbons, why don't you go first?
I think I'm here to answer any questions that council may have. I think this has been before council and executive committee before, so I am sure that we're close to moving this forward. So I'm here to answer any questions, and the Warehouse District is very excited to put a pin in this and bring this forward now into action.
I think, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the Regina Exhibition Association Limited, we would echo the same. We want to congratulate Michelle, Diana, and Chris for their leadership on this file. I think it's been a long time coming, and frankly, we think it's very important. So we're fully supportive of the document before council for discussion. We'd be happy and delighted to entertain any questions. But I think most importantly, there's an opportunity to advance our city center, and I think we should approve this and we should get going.
Mr. Reed and Ms. Gibbons, we were not able to hear you. So you came through halfway. So if you could please introduce yourself and for the record, the organizations you are representing and where you're calling from. You will have 5 minutes to address the committee, which afterwards there will be opportunity to respond to any questions that the committee may have.
Sure, I'll go first.
So, Mr. Chair, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Perfect. Ms. Gibbons, you go first.
All right, thank you. My name is Lisa Gibbons. I am the Executive Director for Regina's Warehouse Business Improvement District. On behalf of the Warehouse District, we are very excited to see this project come forward, and we look forward to seeing it as an action for not only the council, but the development of our city center core. And we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, my name is Tim Reed. I'm President and CEO with the Regina Exhibition Association Limited. We're just down the road from you folks, a little bit to the west. Want to echo the comments by Ms. Gibbons, and I think by the downtown bid as well. Certainly this has been a project that we have fully endorsed. I want to recognize Michelle, Diana, and Chris for their leadership on this. I think this is a project that's very much needed, but most importantly has been well managed and brought to an outcome. Our board of directors fully endorses the document that is before you and is supportive of it. I think as an organization, we feel that this will help us advance the definition of our city center, as well as align more effectively as agencies. So on behalf of the Exhibition Association and our board of directors, you have our full support, and we'd be delighted to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Reed. Ms. Gibbons, do any members I have questions for the delegation. Oh. We have Zidania, go ahead.
Thanks. So, my first question is, I believe that Councillor Hawkins had moved a name change to this committee. Is this the name change, or did that not make it to this draft of the terms of reference?
I certainly could take from our perspective, the name change was captured, but perhaps we would move that to your administration just to confirm that it was in keeping with Councillor Hawkins' request. But I do believe it is no longer the CCP committee was the issue.
Okay.
So I do believe it's changed.
I got a thumbs up, so apparently it's changed. It still seemed kind of long to me, which is why it's fine though, which is why I asked. So another question that I have is I noticed in the terms of reference that there is supposed to be one nonprofit representative, yet 2 private development representatives. I was wondering why it wouldn't be equal for that, like either 1 or 2 of each.
Tim, maybe I can take a first hit at this, and then you can add in comments.
That'd be great.
I don't think either of us are. We're in an effort to keep the committee from becoming too cumbersome. I think that's why the numbers were perhaps kept lower. There could be an argument to add a second nonprofit. I would add that the warehouse district would be hopeful that those 2 private developers, one of which would be an adaptive reuse developer, someone who has that in their portfolio and has done that well, and the other developer have a significant piece of development within the city center in their portfolio.
Okay.
And I may just add to that, I think the other thought around that through the chair was, if you look at the makeup of the committee, EDR is technically a not-for-profit organization. Reconciliation Regina would be a not-for-profit, as well as the downtown bid, the warehouse bid, and Wheel. And so I think from a balance standpoint, there's a number of not-for-profits, so they're perhaps more structured than just saying downtown not-for-profit. And so we actually wanted that entrepreneurial and developers' thoughts at the table.
Okay. Okay, so I think my other questions are for administration. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I see none. Thank you very much, Mr. Reid and Ms. Gibbons, for answering questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stay safe.
Thank you, and you can leave the meeting now. Thank you. Okay, we will consider now EX 2158, City Center Core Development Advisory Committee, terms of reference. Can I have someone from the administration to introduce the report? Is that you, Mr. Holden? Oh, there we go. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think, as the delegations have indicated, this is the next step in advancing this very important work. On April 14th of 2021, Council approved the City Centre Core Framework, so that is the name change that was recommended, and the establishment of an advisory committee of Council. That advisory committee of Council had a mandate to align the priorities of the partner organizations, which are Regina Downtown Business Improvement District, of which Ms. Gibbons was here today, Ms. Verisic, who wasn't able to join us today because she had other commitments, and the Warehouse Business Improvement District, which Ms. Gibbons joined us, and Regina Exhibition Association, and Mr. Reid joined us, and of course the City of Regina. And the mandate is to guide collaborative negotiations and solutions, and then advise Council on the recommended approaches for the advancement and improvement of our City Centre core. So the administration was directed to return with a draft terms of reference for the committee, which are in front of you today. The proposed terms of reference were based on the mandate and the objectives that are outlined in the framework, and they've been reviewed and are supported by the partner organizations, as was indicated through the delegations. And one of the first deliverables of that committee is to prioritize the policies and action items in the framework. So if approved by Council, the committee bylaw will be amended to include the terms of reference for this secondary committee of Council, and of course the clerk's office will then proceed with the appointment of representatives to the committee in accordance with the procedure bylaw. And between Ms. Harlock, who provided a lot of the leadership on this file, with Ms. Foreman, who's our Integration and Stakeholder Relations Manager, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holden. Can I have someone to move the report, please? Councillor Stanishuk. Thank you. Any questions from the members on report? I believe there's a first one blinking here. I think you want to, Councillor Stanishuk, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So one of my questions is regarding, with the terms of reference, point 4.4 in terms of the term of the members. And I did notice that point 4 says that the members shall not be eligible to serve on the committee for longer than 9 consecutive years. So I have a question about why 9 was chosen. That is a long term.
Mr. Holden?
I'll start, and then
And the mayor?
I might ask Ms. Foreman to provide some additional comment. It's not unusual for board terms to be in the 3-year range, and a lot of bylaws of nonprofit organizations set a max term. So this would be consistent with what you'll see in some of the other organizations that are municipal corporations of the city, whether it's EDR, whether it's real. So it does seem like a long time, but it does give an opportunity for some tenure and some experience to be on those boards, but it does restrict the length of the term to no more than 9 consecutive years.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Second question, or was there another response? Sorry.
I think Ms.
Okay.
Clerk would like to add to that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Stadnichuk, Council made a policy decision a number of years ago, I believe it was in 2009, that required all appointments to any various committees that Council has to be established with a ceiling of no more than 9 years.
Oh.
So that's the policy that's in place at this point in time. That doesn't mean you're on there for 9 years of guarantee, but we try to avoid anybody sitting on a committee for longer than that.
Okay, thank you for that. And my second question, it's kind of related to what Ms. Gibbons said in terms of the criteria for the private development representatives. And so she gave some indication of what her thoughts were on that. And I'm wondering if there has been some thought on that as well, if rather than a developer perhaps that only has experience in greenfield development, whether or not there's been some consideration in terms of private developers that have some experience in doing this kind of core development.
Mr. Holden, that goes to you.
Sure. So we're in the process of finalizing those qualifications for those representatives, but the criteria that we've looked at is they need to have a local office. They have to development in the city core within the last 5 years. Support development such as, associations that they're involved with. And their mandate obviously has to support the vision of the framework, which is great places in the heart of our city, connected, inclusive, and invested. And of course, sustainability practices. So consistent with the city center core framework, characteristics coordinated in prosperity and synergized for environmental sustainability. That's within the first original version that was approved back on April 14th. So we are looking to make sure that we're getting, a couple of developers that have broad experience, and that definitely sustainability is going to be one of the criteria and a priority for the selection of those developers.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Stanishuk. Now we're going to go. Okay, Councillor Zania, go ahead.
Okay, so my first question is a follow-up. I had the same question about the 9 consecutive years, but I do have a follow-up question. So it says other than council, the committee members can serve for, no longer than 9 consecutive years. So does that mean that theoretically a council member could serve indefinitely on this role if they kept getting nominated for it year after year, or is there any ceiling for that?
Mr. Clerk, go ahead.
Thank you. Specifically, Councillor, there would be no restriction on council doing that, but I'd respectfully suggest that that would go against the spirit and intent of trying to get different ideas and perspectives.
Right, okay. And then, do we know who the City of Regina rep will be on this committee? Has that been determined?
Mr. Holden?
We have not made that decision at this point, but obviously we want to make sure that the appropriate level of representation from administration is consistent with who else is on the committee from the various organizations and boards.
Okay. And perhaps, I think my last question is just more information about like what will be the council, the process and timeline for the council appointments to this committee. Will this just be similar to all of the other committee appointments and in the same time frame?
Mr. Holden?
So if this is approved today, then obviously the clerk will look to fill those positions, and we'll go through a process, and then of course implementation will require the appointment of councillors, but I'll let Mr. Nicol comment further.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, it would be our intention that we would roll this into our broad advertisement for all committee appointments, and then typically that comes before Executive Committee and Council in a best case scenario the end of November, early December, so that these appointments can take effect January 1st.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Okay, I see none. Mr. Clerk, take the vote, please.
Thank you. I'll begin with Councillor Stadnichuk, please.
In favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw. Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Carries 9-0. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we will now consider item EX 2159, National Day for the Truth and Reconciliation. Can I ask someone from administration to introduce the report? Is that you, Mr. Holden? Okay, I'll give you the mic. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So the report in front of you today is an information report that's advising the Exec Committee of the Administration's decision to recognize the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30 as a statutory holiday for all employees of the City of Regina. So this summer, the Government of Canada created a federal statutory holiday in response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action number 80. City of Regina recognizes the importance of officially honoring September 30th in commitment to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action. Regina is located in Treaty 4 land in an area that's rich in Indigenous history and the heartland of the Métis in Canada. This year's observation of September 30th will be particularly important given the proximity of the discovery of the unmarked graves in the neighboring communities in the Cowessess First Nation. And remembering those who never made it home and honoring the survivors who are our friends, our neighbors, and our fellow citizens will help our journey forward. September 30th will become a designated paid holiday for staff in alignment with our collective bargaining agreements for all city employees. And city employees and their families are encouraged to embrace the significance of the day to honor Indigenous people and reflect on the acts of reconciliation. This is not simply a day off for city employees. This is a day where we are going to encourage all of our employees and citizens of Regina to reflect on the importance of that day. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I'm joined by Ms. Folk and Mr. Chowdhury, who's our Director of People and Agriculture, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Can I have someone to move, receive, and file for this report? Councillor Zahidniak And I believe you have questions. I think you're up first.
Okay.
There you are. Go ahead.
So I greatly appreciate the city's leadership on this issue. I just have one thing, a comment in the report. So on page 3, it mentions that the financial cost of providing stat holiday is $575,800, and part of that is lost productivity costs of $99,100. So I would just sort of challenge the wording of that, because that's not an extra cost that we will be incurring. Like, this is money that we pay that we would have paid our employees anyway. And so I just think it's sort of, there could have been a different way of saying that didn't come across as like this, it's not an extra cost, and it sort of appears that way. And we also, in terms of lost productivity costs, I think that that's definitely not a fixed number. There's been lots of examples of places around the world who have shortened their work week and have actually found that it increases productivity. So I'm not feeling that is the best representation of I think it could have been worded a bit differently, and I would challenge whether or not we know the impact on productivity. So just a comment.
Mr. Holding, do you want to comment that?
Yeah, if I may, I'll start, and then I might ask Ms. Folk to just add some additional comment. At the end of the day, this was a work day for folks. Mm-hmm. This decision, obviously, has made it a day off. Yeah. So our collective agreements require that if somebody works on a statutory holiday, that then they are paid at overtime rates. Mm-hmm. So we have to balance, obviously, giving people time off, and still, as this is not a provincial holiday and it will not be recognized by all employers, that we have a balance of operations that we need to continue. So there is some additional costs that we will have to incur. So, language in terms of the direct cost, that's the cost to give employees a day off, and the additional cost is really the cost of providing overtime to those employees that are required to continue to provide service because we need to meet needs of citizens.
So then a follow-up question. So is that $575,800, is that the number for overtime then? Or is that just the number for the day off for everyone?
The $575,800 includes the cost of paying time to be off on that day, and the additional cost that we're anticipating right now. I mean, those are estimates that we'll be paying for having people continue to be at work and being paid overtime. So that $575 is the total cost.
Right. Okay. So I guess I would have preferred to just see what are the overtime costs, because I see that differently, because that is an extra cost, and then the rest is a cost that we already incur. But that's just my preference. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Stanichak, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, just a question. Which city services will continue to be provided on September 30th? And will it be just the same as any other stat holiday? I assume so, but just...
I'll actually ask Ms. Folk to respond to that question.
Okay, Ms. Folk, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the plan at this point is to mimic what we do provide on regular statutory holidays. So you'll see a modified transit service, you'll see landfill operation, etc. So, and when it comes to transit service, that is Sunday hours, so it will meet our requirements in terms of ensuring that people have the ability to move around the city, including going to work.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm really happy that we are doing this, and I think it's a great model that the city is showing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Bresciani, go ahead.
Thank you. I also appreciate us moving forward with this. I think it's very important to our city and our province, our country. Couple things. So it is for people to take some time to recognize this day. What will be going on in this day for people to be able to partake in, or what will be is the city doing anything in this area for our staff who will be off and maybe many others that will be off to maybe understand and learn a little bit more about this. Through the chair.
Mr. Holden?
So again, I'll start and then ask Ms. Folk to add through some of the work that we're doing through diversity and inclusion within her division. One of the things that was being planned was an event to celebrate the National Day. It was being planned for Mosaic Stadium, and the working committee that was putting that together has decided, due to increasing numbers of COVID, to postpone that to a future date. So that was one event that a lot of community leaders were quite excited about. It was to feature and showcase children and youth in an appreciation and understanding of the day and the importance of truth. So that will happen into the future. It's not being canceled, it's being postponed to a future date. And I'll let Ms. Folk just talk about some of the initiatives that we're undertaking as a city and a community to celebrate. Again, this is Orange Shirt Day, and it's now become a national holiday.
Ms. Folk, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Our team continues to actively work with Indigenous-led organizations and other large organizations within the community, like SGI, Farm Credit Corporation, to plan a community festival. So there'll be more information coming out in the next week or two around specifics around that. There is a full slate of activities planned within our community. We'll be leveraging that, again, in cooperation with the Regina Public Library and others, to get the message out, not only with our own staff, but within the community.
Thank you for that. I would also, if I could just add, appreciate if there was something that would be on our city website online for people who do not feel comfortable to go out or are not unable to go out, that there would be some resources there for people to access. And it would be, I think, important to also include the Tourism Regina kind of on their links, so kind of everybody's kind of linked into kind of what there is to do that day, both virtually and in person. So thank you, and I appreciate this. And I do appreciate on page 3 with the financials, because I think it is something that we will be asked as I think, the tax dollar, we are to be prudent with the tax dollar, and this is a question that has already come up, so I do appreciate it in the report, just to understand a little bit more about the cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Masters, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the cost, when the federal government proposes something that our city, for example, costs $576,000, what are the options for cost recovery on that? Where does that money come from?
Mr. Holden?
So through you, Mr. Chair, and Mayor Masters, a great question. There has been discussions, at least amongst elected officials, about decisions that get made by the federal government, the impacts that they have on local communities. The discussion, and I know there's conversations with the province, because they were looking at potentially a different day. There's conversations just about the impacts of the financial costs to provide a statutory holiday, especially when collective agreements require it. But really, there is no way for municipalities to recover funds either from the provincial government or the federal government at this point.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. And so looking at this, and I'm completely fine with the investment. Have we thought at all about how we measure from a city or a civic employee perspective? It's not just a day off, it's a day to reflect and to participate in events that commemorate the day. Have we set up any metrics from an internal perspective, or what does success look like in terms of, you think about $576,000 as an investment in employee education or employee learning. Have we set any metrics for what that looks like internally?
Mr. Holden?
So obviously we have, through our training and education programs with staff, we have prioritized the importance of truth and reconciliation. We have awareness sessions. sensitivity training. So we do have requirements in terms of mandatory training to make sure that people are receiving exposure to that type of training. So we do require that as an onboarding requirement. I'm not sure if there are other metrics that we measure. I might ask Ms. Folk for additional comment.
Oh, I'm working on it. Hang on, whatever it is. Go ahead, Ms. Hope.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Of course, it's something that we are always looking at. Our metrics are in development perspective. One of the elements that the team is building into the communications plan is creating a space on City Connect for employees to share their stories in terms of how they mark the day. And I think that's an important starting point. And it really supports us in terms of trying to build the awareness around the reconciliation, Truth and Reconciliation Commissions and the calls to action. And really that is what it is, about building awareness, knowledge, recognizing that, and then sharing that. And I think that's an important first step as we continue to build those other elements out.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay. Any further questions? Anyone else? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. So I'll call on the clerk for the vote. We did move early.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll start with Councillor Zahidniak, please.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnicek.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Carries 10-0, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have someone to move a resolution for private session? Oh, Councilor Zahidniak. Thank you. Call the question. Anyone opposes that? I don't see none. That is carried. So can I have a motion to recess for, I would say 10 minutes, so 10 to 10? Need more than that? No? Okay, Councilor Hawkins, 10 minutes. Thank you. We'll be back at 10 to 10.